Good afternoon, and welcome to this special taping of CAT TV show, New Faces and New Opportunities in the Bennington region. I'm Bill Colvin. I'm the director of the Bennington County Regional Commission, also known as the BCRC. The BCRC is the Regional Planning Commission and Regional Development Corporation representing 17 municipalities in southwestern Vermont. And we're involved in a number of things in the economic development front, including the facilitation of a workforce and education committee made up of about 30 volunteers from the education sector, industry, nonprofit, and government sectors. It comes together monthly and plans activities around workforce development and career exposure. We do a number of training and other events and programs to support and grow the regional workforce. We've been doing this for a number of years now, beginning back in 2006, we created what was then April Career Week, which later became, with a number of activities, April Career Month. And we have some kind of feature programs that happen in and around April, not all in April, including some of our marquee programs such as the Financial Reality Fair, the Sophomore Summit. We support some internships, career fairs, and open houses that get the community into our businesses and show really to both the youth in the community and adults what the opportunities are for establishing and growing a career in our region. And one constant that has been a part of our Career Month activities since the inception have been a series of op-ed pieces through a partnership with the Bennington Banner. And these began as what we called We Make Cool Stuff. So we featured manufacturers and kind of gave an articulation of what they did in their manufacturing facilities to draw attention to career opportunities there. And that morphed over time to include a broader range of businesses, and we called it We Do Cool Things, which opened it up to kind of service businesses and the like, and outside of the exclusively the manufacturing realm. And now, thanks to the folks assembled around this table, we've broadened it and changed it yet again to new faces and new opportunities. And this year, we are focusing on people who have relocated in the recent past to the Bennington region. And we're just really exploring with them what their career paths have been and how they have both found Bennington and what kind of support they have found in the Bennington region for these career opportunities. So I want to thank the panelists that are here with me this afternoon. I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves, and then we'll just kind of walk through kind of a series of background questions and have a conversation. So I'll begin here with Linda to my right.
My name is Linda Schmidt, and I live in Sandgate.
Okay. Thanks, Linda.
Hi, I'm Nathan Fowle, and I live in Pownell.
Hey, I'm Beth Sturgeon. I'm Nate's partner, and I also live in Fowle.
And I'm Michelle Emery, and I live in Manchester.
Great. Well, thanks again. And again, each of these folks will be featured or has been featured, depending on when the article will run in the Banner as part of their op-ed series for Career Month. So we'll dive in no particular order. Feel free to kind of jump in response. We will get to each of you, but order's kind of irrelevant. So can we talk about what your career pathway has been, just to kind of start, just so the audience has an idea of, who we're talking to. So who'd like to jump in?
I'm happy to go first.
Great. Thanks, Nathan.
I guess the short version is I'm kind of a classic millennial. I studied music in college and have done probably 10 different unrelated things since then. And I honestly don't know if there's really a whole lot of things that sort of unify those jobs. I guess being around people and sort of using my communication skills is maybe kind of one through line. Right now I'm a freelance photographer and photo editor. I own a couple of rental properties. I do some, sort of very light elder care for a couple of relatives that we have living with us. And I do a bunch of volunteer work for the town of Pownell on their Parks and Recreation Conservation Commission, working on their town forest. So just a few kind of local recreation projects I'm excited about. So yeah, I don't know how much deeper you want to go. That's the short version.
That's great, and it sounds kind of like that classic one person, many jobs that we often see here, kind of in the region.
I think sort of one of the markers of our generation is that we're good at learning how to do things on the fly.
Yeah, which is great. Beth, you want to jump in?
Sure. So after college, I was set on being a wildlife conservation researcher. That I was gonna live in a tent on the savannah and study, lions or something amazing like that. That's a tough track, it turns out. And I learned the hard way. After school, I did a number of field work projects. So the first one was in the Marin Headlands in the Bay Area, out in California, trapping raptors, so birds of prey, hawks, which was amazing. It was really quite an experience. And then I did that in Wyoming as well. And then I moved to Costa Rica for a while, and I chased monkeys around the jungle and got all sorts of infections and scorpion bites. And, just really, it was an adventure. And then I started to think, I really care about climate change, and I wanted to make that part of my career. So I ended up on a corporate real estate team in their sustainability department, doing a bunch of different things. We were studying healthy materials in building products, in the hopes of building healthier offices, to get rid of sort of toxic things in our workplaces. And then just kind of over time I shifted towards looking at carbon and carbon emissions and doing carbon accounting. So that's kind of the space I'm in now.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks. Cool. Michelle.
I actually wanted to be a teacher. I teach French currently at Arlington High School, and I wanted to be a teacher when I was small. My grandmother was a teacher, but I thought I wanted to be an English teacher. And I wanted to be an actress too, but my 7th grade English teacher, when I said I wanted to be either an actress or a teacher, he said, well, teaching is the longest run you'll ever have to the hardest audience you will ever play to. And I was like, it stuck with me, and I kind of stayed on the actress track for a little while, but then I just kept coming back to what he said. And then I found myself in college majoring in English, but I had done a high school exchange and loved France, and I would just keep taking French classes, and classes for my major, French class, fill out the semester. And I found myself coming back from a semester in France with only one class left to finish the French major I was not, and 3 classes left to finish the English major that I was. And I started to go, And then when I went to graduate school for my master's in teaching, it was a very different job market than right now. It was very, very difficult to get teacher jobs. And I said, well, I could get certified in 2 things because that would be a handy thing to have. Like, I'm doing it anyway. And they said, oh, well, you just have these other little things. And so I student taught for both, and I discovered that I much preferred teaching French because I'm an eclecticist. I like all the things. And so when you teach language, you get to talk about art, you get to talk about dance and theater, you get to talk about literature, you get to talk about science, you get to talk about politics, you get to talk about everything. Anything is fair game as long as you do it in the target language. And so that really pleased me a lot more. And then the first job that came down the pike was a French teacher job, and there I was. I've had kind of a strange path to Arlington, though, because I didn't just teach. I encountered a French sailor my first year. And we eventually got married a few years later, and I moved to France, and I lived there for 8 years. And then he wanted to come to America. So 20 years ago, we moved back to the States, and I started in Pennsylvania, and then I got a job up here, thankfully, because I love Vermont. And now I find myself at Arlington starting a new French program I haven't had French for a few years, and it's very exciting. And I love the community. I love being here in Vermont. I love teaching in Vermont. So, and I'm glad I landed here.
Well, great. And so are we. So thank you.
Interesting path.
Yeah, Linda.
I have a Pennsylvania connection too. I was born in Valley Forge and grew up in Valley Forge, PA, outside of Philadelphia, and went to college north of New York City in Westchester, Bronxville, and ended up getting an internship while I was there. I knew I was going to be a lit major in college. There was never any question of that. And the internship that I ended up getting was with a tiny, tiny arts quarterly. It was just me and the editor and the publisher. And because we were so short-staffed,
Great.
whatever I wanted to do, they would let me do. So I learned a lot. And I was there for a couple of years, had a couple of paychecks bounce. They were always strapped for cash. I ended up getting a job at Hearst Magazines in New York, working for Redbook as a production editor, and I was there a couple of years. And then was lucky to have a colleague transfer over to Random House, and she brought me over to Random House a year after she moved. And I ended up ultimately rising through the ranks at Fodor's Travel Guides, which was owned by Random House, and I became the managing editor there.
Oh, wow.
That was eventually sold, and I was approached by the operations head in the audio division at Random House. And knowing nothing about audiobooks, she moved me into her group, and that's where I've been ever since. So I'm the director of managing editorial and production for audio, but also with a lot of print book experience.
Great.
Wow.
So I love the fact that you mentioned that you knew you were going to be a lit major, because I think in your article it said something, I'm paraphrasing, but something that your dad
My
had
dad,
mentioned. You might
yeah.
be the only person he's ever met who actually knew what they wanted to do as a child and ended up doing it.
Yes,
So
I did. I was
that's
very
pretty
fortunate.
fascinating.
Yeah,
That's
I
great.
was very lucky.
So thanks. So as you can see, we have kind of a diverse set of career pathways around the table, as you might expect. And Michelle gave us a little bit of background about kind of the process which led her here to Bennington, but hoping we can expand on that with the others, and you're certainly welcome to jump in and expand as well. But why don't we start with Linda? How did you end up in Sandgate? along that path?
I owe a lot of it to the CEO of Random House, who, I don't know, a year and a half or so into the pandemic decided that remote work was just fine. I was working remotely from our house in New Jersey, central New Jersey, where we lived. And literally, no exaggeration, the afternoon she announced that to the company, my husband sat down next to me on the couch and he opened up his laptop and he typed in Sandgate on Realtor.com, because we had looked at a house in Arlington about 8 years before on River Road. Loved the area, loved Sandgate, which we drove through, but the house was not right. Kind of put that in the back of our minds. But when he opened his computer, our house had been on the market for just a matter of hours. And we came up that weekend, and it was during that time where people were waiving inspections and buying things that we got very, very lucky. And that's how we ended up in Sandgate.
So, of all of the places in the world, you had been to Arlington before, kind of attracted to the area, but were you pretty certain when you wanted to move out of New Jersey that this is where you wanted to be? And
Yes. Yeah. We had looked at houses up the Hudson that were commutable from New York, but very glad that did not become necessary.
Great. And what about your husband? Is he working?
He's
working
CPA.
remote? Okay.
He's retired at this point.
Okay.
But he's doing some things for the town, as am I, and keeping busy with the house.
Okay. Great.
Oh, yeah.
Great. So, Nate, Beth,
Nate.
what's your story about
Sorry.
Well, so in 2018, we moved from Oakland, California to St. Louis, Missouri. Beth was just kind of sick of living in the Bay Area and the hustle and bustle out there, and so we knew we wanted to sort of end up somewhere else, but we didn't really know where. And St. Louis was where she's got family roots there. So we spent a few years living there just before and during the beginning of the pandemic. And I had gotten a job as a real estate agent. That was sort of that was the angle I was working when I got there. And of course, yeah, sort of right as I was starting to get my feet under me, everything shut down. And yeah, I mean, I think I grew up in Pownell.
Okay.
My parents moved there in the early 1980s and built a house up there. So yeah, I don't know, just the pandemic kind of changed my thinking a little bit. You know, it had been a decade or more of, seeing my parents a couple of times a year when they come out to visit. And, they're not getting any younger and I'm not either. And I have, cousins around here with little kids. And I just, when the pandemic hit, I just started thinking about how that was important to sort of make those people a part of my life. And so we went through a few different iterations because we wanted to make sure that we brought Beth's mom along with us too. Okay. And initially we were thinking that St. Louis was kind of going to be the spot, and we just weren't able to convince other family members to move out there. So yeah, I really, when I left Vermont, the winters, I mean, just kind of being young here is hard, and I really assumed I would never come back, and I was very trepidatious coming back. I just worried about kind of regressing to feeling like a child around my parents, running into people from high school that I knew that maybe I didn't have a whole lot in common with anymore because our experiences have been so different. And just, that feeling of like, we'd lived in these big cities where I'm super anonymous, and losing that anonymity was also kind of a scary idea. And actually being here, I was completely wrong on all those things. It ended up being so much better than I could have imagined. The community that my parents have and that I built up when I was young is still here and helped us with finding a house and a good, car mechanic and kind of all these important things we needed. And we didn't have to fight over the houses because our parents had friends who just happened to want to sell off market, and so we
got so lucky.
having my family here really gave us just a huge leg up. And then the other thing that made it possible was that Beth was working from home, and that's especially because I was just leaving a career that I had just attempted to start. Right. We really, without that sort of solid, paycheck we could count on, it would have been impossible. Sure. Anything you want to add to that?
I think you covered it. Yeah, just the remote work was key.
Yeah.
And moving here during the pandemic was a little tricky, moving anywhere. But once things started to lift, it was so easy to make friends, and just the community is so welcoming.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Awesome. And Beth's mom ended up moving with us, and since then her uncle, who lived in Florida, has also moved and lives in a house that we own just a few doors down from where we are now.
They live next to each other.
So we've got our whole family pretty well consolidated right now.
The compound expands. That's great. So Beth, I'm wondering if Nate had the, kind of familial connection to Pownell and to the region. You did not. What was that kind of discussion and process? It sounded like you thought maybe you were going to end up in St. Louis, and this is not that. So I'm just wondering, can you talk about kind of your process and coming to, understand and embrace and kind of, yay, Pownell.
It's funny. The first time, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but the first time that I visited your parents' house in this community and saw just how beautiful it was, I was kind of like, all right, I could see living here. Didn't know how, because I was working in an office at that point. But yeah, it's just so gorgeous, and Vermont is this sort of beacon of light of environmental, just leading the way on environmental work, and politically I really appreciate the state. So I was never not open to moving to Vermont, and then just this, everything lined up, right? I know Vermont has been working so hard on getting good internet access, and this could not have happened for us if that wasn't in place.
Same for us.
Right, yeah, the remote work.
Yeah.
So that had to line up, and just being able to, find a job that allowed remote work. But yeah, there's very something very special about those
Yeah.
mountains in Pownell and how beautiful they are.
Beautiful.
So I was open to it from the start, really.
Well, just one other thing to Beth's credit, like, she didn't know anyone
Right.
coming back here essentially, and she made a really good concerted effort to reach out and get involved with a couple of organizations kind of early on, the Shires Young Professionals and also the Pownell Democrats, and I think that was the turning point. At least, I mean, certainly for me, I think Beth found this amazing community there and brought me in, and really now, despite the fact that I have all these friends around here, sort of the community I feel the most attached to is the folks that I've met through Beth and through the young professionals in Bennington, and there's just so many people in our age range with similar sort of morals and interests, and we've just felt very welcomed here and we feel like we fit in here in a way I wasn't expecting.
That's great. And how's the transition been where was your mom before moving here, and what's that transition been like?
So my mom was in a suburb of St. Louis. It was a nice suburb. There were sidewalks. She knew her neighbors. When the pandemic hit, they had little block parties outside. It was a really good spot for her. So bringing her here was a little tough because, especially Pownell, it's not walkable. There aren't sidewalks. And she's 80 now, and so, getting around's a little harder. So I think the transition, it was a tougher transition for her, and it's hard at 80 to start making friends.
Sure.
Yeah.
But with our family network, she landed in this wonderful extended family where Nate's mom and we should also say Nate's brother and his partner moved here too, and his partner happens to be one of my very best friends.
Oh, wow.
So,
Great.
and she brought her parents, so we really the compound.
Wow.
Yeah, there's like probably 12 or 14 of us now.
That's
or
a
something
village.
like
It's
that.
a village,
Yeah.
yes. But so my mom sort of inherited these friends in the family, so that
Right.
helped a lot. And then sort of this option of bringing her brother from Florida, that I think was really helpful too. Just she could really help him. He didn't have other family, so
Wow.
it's been good. We missed the sidewalks and the
Yeah,
walkability
understood.
being on Pownell, but everything else.
Well,
is good.
it's interesting to kind of explore kind of the different experiences intergenerationally, but sounds like your family is single-handedly or single-family, changing the demographics of Pownell much to all of our benefits.
Hopefully the
thank
benefit.
you. Yeah, absolutely. So, Michelle, I don't know if there's anything you want to expand
Well,
on your trip, on your
We were
kind of
also
process?
brand new. We were also brand new
Uh-huh.
to Vermont. We had no
Okay.
connections up here, no family or anything. And but we came up for my job. My husband is French, and he is a chef, and he is also does repairs. He's actually gone back and forth between the two. He repairs houses, and he did not want a new house. He wanted something older, and so we ended up purchasing one of the first houses in southern Vermont. Actually, it dates to 1774,
Oh, wow.
Wow.
and it's been a joy to work on. I mean, it's been a joy to watch him work because I don't do very much to help on that part. I finance the work, and so he has sort of French values on quality, and there were areas of our life in the Philadelphia area that were frustrating for him. And I think it was also a time period because I think America kind of went into, our food got kind of, and we're moving out of that. The food scene is better in Philadelphia now than it was when we moved up here. But when he arrived, when we arrived, we really found that Vermont has a value on quality food, quality anything. If you're a woodworker, quality, beautiful furniture, art everywhere, and there's not. I don't know. I was teaching at a very exclusive school in Philadelphia, where only certain. I don't know how to frame that. Like certain professions, let's say, were more valued over others. I feel like Vermont has a better handle on, there's quality like in the food sector, there's quality farmers. Like you have really high quality farming, really high quality art and handicrafts, and really high quality, but high quality intellectual stuff. To everything is just a value on doing good work, and so we really loved that aspect of moving up here. And I loved having my children grow up in an environment where they had smaller classes and they were outside all the time, and that was another thing that really attracted us to the place. I mean, we came because of my job, so we sort of landed here, but we were very happy here.
That's great. That's great. So, we haven't talked about kind of children and where you see, any, without sharing too much personal information, what do you think, where do you see your children? Do you think there's a possibility of them kind of going away and coming back?
Well, my son actually wants to come back.
Okay.
My daughter is, I have a city mouse and a country mouse.
Okay.
And my son attended Burn Burton and went to their mountain campus program and really found his happy place. He wasn't a fan of schoolwork in general. And he found that, I can study, I can be outside, and I can find, there's all these professions that I can do where I can do all the things I love and be useful and that sort of thing. And he ended up, and he went to college in Vermont. He went to Sterling in Craftsbury and loved that. He actually went to Green Mountain and then Sterling. And he's out in Montana, and he just got married last year to a fellow Sterling graduate, outdoor ed major. And they really love New England, and they want to come back to New England and establish themselves here. My daughter, the city mouse, she went to college in the DC area and is in South Korea right now working on a master's. And I don't know if she'll even come back to the continent, much less Vermont. So she loves to come back here to visit, though. She absolutely adores Vermont. So
so one of the goals, I think, in this process that we do with the Workforce and Education Committee, and in particular Career Month, is to give the community, beginning with the high school students. So for Sophomore Summit, for example, we bring in kind of dozens of professionals, and they introduce the students to what are the careers and the opportunity, and there are discussions similar to this. It's like, what's your background? What did you study in school that led you to be an engineer or a lawyer or a plumber or whatever the professions happen to be, and it really opens the students' eyes to the opportunities in the region. And we are open and encourage training in the trades. The average plumber in Vermont is in their late 50s. Electricians are not dissimilar. You have an old house. Fortunately, it sounds like your husband works on the house. But and you mentioned, Nate, of kind of how important it was to have connections to find tradespeople. So we certainly encourage that, because we know that's finding tradespeople and training tradespeople is really going to be important to the continued success of the region. But we also recognize people are going to go away to college, and what we're hoping is before they make that trip, they're at least aware of what the opportunities are, that if they want to come back, maybe the time to raise a family, maybe just to kind of get out of a more hectic lifestyle, they're at least open to coming back to the region. So it's one of the real goals that we have as part of kind of all of this programming that we do in Career Month.
I would just like to say thank you for doing all that. As a teacher of the students who are benefiting from all of these programs, I've taught at 2 schools in Bennington County. Both of them send students to those programs. And really, it's just fabulous, because they don't always realize all the opportunities that there are here. I think any kid in any town, having grown up in a small town in Pennsylvania, any kid in any town is sort of like, I want to get out of Dodge. I want to, it's just where they grow up, and you say, I want to go see the world. And so kids tend to look down on wherever they are. I always tell my students, a lot of people spend a lot of money to come here, and you get to grow up here, like good grief. But they don't realize all the opportunities that are around them. until they go to some of these programs. And sometimes they resist, and we have to sort of give them a little push and say,
Yeah.
no, you should attend this program,
Yeah.
whether it's Sophomore Summit or some of the career fairs and that sort of thing that you all put on. So thank you.
Yeah, so it's, and it's really a collaborative effort. Like I said, there's about 30 people that participate in this Workforce and Education Committee, and it's not even a formal group other than that we meet the first Monday of each month and kind of talk about what's on the agenda and what are the programs coming up, and people kind of come in and out as interests, dictates, and it's been really fascinating to kind of watch things grow over the time. The other kind of key program we do is the Financial Reality Fair, where students, 9th and 10th graders, work with their counselors to kind of pick a career, and then volunteers, and again, 50 or 60 volunteers staff tables during Financial Reality Fair Day, and students are assigned a salary based upon the career that they've chosen, and then they go around to the tables, and it's like, here's how much your rent is, and this is what your auto payment is going to be based upon what
Oh
you.
man.
And
Yeah.
suddenly they start to realize, okay, am I going to have a cell phone, or am I going to buy it? Am I going to have a dog? And it's like, and then there's an opportunity. There are these tables that they go to kind of upgrade their skills, and what's the investment there, and what's that mean, and what does that do for your life? So it's kind of a fun activity to give students this real world kind of look at some of the hard decisions that might be coming their way at very low risk.
That's a
to them.
super modern thing to be doing. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
like when I was coming out of high school, sort of the general consensus was go to college and get a degree in whatever you want, and as long as you have a college degree, that will open all the doors that you could ever possibly need, and you'll be just fine. And yes, so that leads me and a lot of other people, I think, to take classes and study things that they're interested in without really considering the implications of sort of what that means for the rest of their lives. So it's great that you're kind of getting at the students at the right moment there to really open up expand their perspective about what's out there.
And that's really just the goal, is to start having students start thinking in different ways early on, before things are kind of set in stone. So and similarly, I grew up in Shaftesbury. I was born and raised here. I'm actually 9th generation. My family was one of the first families to settle in North Bennington, and I was the first person from my family to go to college, so I went away to school. Actually, similarly, I was a political science major at Middlebury, and was looking at the job market that was facing me, and I was like, maybe I'll minor in education. So I did that kind of late, did the student teaching, and lo and behold, when I graduated from Middlebury, the job that was the best option for me was actually as an elementary school teacher back at Shaftesbury with many of the teachers that I had
Wow.
growing up. So
That's great.
I spent 7 years doing that before I went and got my MBA, and then did some consulting and traveling, and ended up kind of back here in the region. So not kind of dissimilar, but as my parents aged, I was like, I want to be back in the region. So a lot of different paths, for sure that end up back here. So let's talk about kind of what type of support beyond maybe the family support. Obviously, has been instrumental to Beth and Nate, but and you touched on briefly young professionals, Southern Vermont young professionals, or South Shire young professionals. But what other kind of supports have you found for your kind of careers and your relocation and just kind of general in the region? I think people would be interested in that. Karen jumps in.
Well, of course, support for teachers in general is from parent support, community support for the things that we try to do with students and for our teaching. One thing that I do, and that many language teachers do in Southern Vermont and everywhere, is travel. And I really feel that travel is essential for students. And it's not just from language. It's, people say, oh, well, you're learning French, you should go to French-speaking places. Obviously, that's great. But I really feel that that travel outside the United States is essential. And it doesn't matter whether kids are aiming for college or trades or military or the workforce or whatever. When you travel outside the United States, you learn about where you're going, but you also learn about what it means to be an American and what it means to live in your place and your corner of the world. And I just find that so essential. And so to make that happen, because it just keeps getting more expensive, and I really believe that everybody needs to go. And so we do lots of fundraisers. And the key with a good fundraiser is to try to do something that the community can participate in, because otherwise you get parents who are already paying for the trip anyway, who are the only ones who come to the fundraiser, and they're not supposed to be, the only market for that. And so when you put on dinners or do product sales or, whatever it is that ends up being the various fundraisers, it's wonderful to have the whole community come out and support and learn. And, we try to keep the kids front and center, so they're talking about where they're going and what they're going to be doing there and what they're learning about, and to talk to community members that are not necessarily directly connected with that year's crop of students. They're usually connected to somebody who went to that school, but it's really wonderful. And so it's wonderful to have a broader base for financing the trips, but it's also wonderful to have a broader base of people that the kids are explaining what they're doing to. So that's a really important way that the community can support.
That's great. Thanks. What other kind of community supports have we found? And I know in Linda's case, Nate's case too, that support may take on the kind of role of playing an active role in the community, and kind of what type of support you grow through that. So, Linda, you want to talk about kind of your roles in Sandgate and what that's meant?
Yeah, in thinking about this question, I realized that my job has been kind of a bubble moving here. Like everything, I was saying to Michelle earlier, everything about my life changed when we moved here except my job. So my job is kind of this constant thread, because it's all New York based. But pretty much as soon as we moved here, I started going to select board meetings in Sandgate, just because I was curious. Something that never would have interested me in Metuchen, New Jersey, where we moved from. Never had time for it, but I started going to meetings, and I was just very interested in the discussions, and I would go every twice a month. And a slot opened up on the select board, and I ran for it, and I got elected. I'm actually just elected to my third stint on the select board, which is very cool.
That's great.
That's awesome.
And I'm really grateful to the community for being accepting of someone who had just gotten here, basically. And so that is, I feel like my professional life has stayed pretty much the same, but my personal life has changed. I have grown personally in other ways. I've been allowed to experiment with a lot of things that I didn't know anything about coming into this, and sometimes it's a success and sometimes it's not. A friend of mine and I also started a neighbor in Sandgate also started a community group called the Sandgate Community Table, and we meet once a month for breakfast, and we bring in speakers, whatever the community is interested in hearing about. And we have a local baker who bakes for us, and that's been going on for about a year now and has been pretty successful. The community's been really, really supportive, and Sandgate is so tiny. We don't really have a town center other than the town hall. This is a chance for people to come together. So again, an example of personal growth, maybe more than professional growth, although I have also been able to hire a couple of freelance proofreaders and copy editors locally, which has been nice.
Yeah, well, that's great. But if you're new to an area and you don't find that kind of personal support, it's going to be really hard to be successful professionally or stay in the region, right?
True.
So, I think that's really important. So Nate, obviously you're involved in a lot of volunteer activities for the town of Pownell, and I'm going to save the Southshire Young Professional support for Beth.
Sure, definitely. Okay, I'll stick to the Pownell stuff.
Yes, but talk to us about that.
Yeah, it's been awesome. I'd never really volunteered for anything like this before we lived in Pownell, and I was urged to volunteer by Beth on the Conservation Commission, which was actually it was a newly created commission that didn't exist before we had this kind of first round of signups. And then, you know, once you're in that world, you start meeting all these other people that are just so inspiring and working so hard. And I just had a few of these situations where someone would come and tell me about a project they're working on, and it's like, ah, crap, now I have to sign up and work on this project too. So really, it escalated. You know, I was on the Conservation Commission, and then somebody from the this trolley path steering committee in Bennington came down and gave a little presentation. I was like, okay, I got to join that too. Somebody from the Parks and Recreation Department came and gave like a little talk to the Conservation Commission, and they had some really cool projects going on, so I got involved in that. And yeah, really, I've built this amazing community in Powell, sort of outside of the folks that my parents have known, and I feel a huge amount of support there. It's been amazing. I just, you know, I remember a few years ago we went down to vote at the firehouse. And there were all these people in there that I like recognized, but whose names I didn't know. We were like, oh, how's it going over at the new house there? You know, it's like just people know it's such a small town. People kind of know everything about you. And if you make the effort to get involved in that community, it gives back a lot of stuff to you. And I've just met so many people. I've built friendships with people I never would have run into otherwise. And actually, one of the cool things I'm working on now that's sort of outside of that, but still another kind of community that's really important to me is I have a little home rock climbing gym. And I started just slowly inviting people that I met who sounded interested to come basically just once a week and hang out and climb and chat. And it's turned into this thing that is also it's drawn this group of people together that I never really would have expected. And for me, and I hope for others, it's kind of this really great sort of weekly touchstone to just know that I'm going to have kind of a little social time, and new people are constantly getting brought into the fold. So it's it's this cool place where sort of my Bennington crew and my Powell crew and my Western Mass crew are all kind of mixing in a way they wouldn't otherwise. So I'm really proud of what that's turned into too, just sort of as a little miniature community. I feel like really invested in my community. I feel really appreciated mostly by the community, though. It's certainly like in a small town, it's easy to ruffle feathers, whether on purpose or inadvertently. But overall, it's just been really positive experience.
Yeah, I think it's great, and I love this message, which is kind of, you know, we had no idea what this discussion was gonna lead to, right? As we entered into this, and again, thanks for doing this. But this whole message that drawing support by giving to others, you know, I hope is a message that the community
One
can take away
caveat I'll
from.
add though is that I'm so lucky that my work is really flexible, because a lot of these meetings are Wednesday at 2 o'clock.
Right. Yeah.
So one of the things I hear constantly from folks that I'm working with is, oh man, it's so great that you're here. We need more, like, I guess I'm not young anymore, but like we need more young people getting involved. And I'm like, I agree, but also like I'm the exception that proves the rule. It's most people do not. They've got kids, they've got their jobs. Yeah. They don't have the time to dedicate to it. Right. So I'm so fortunate that I'm in a position to be able to do that stuff, and it's not necessarily available for everybody who moves here, just because it takes an enormous amount of sort of volunteer time outside your normal stuff. Yeah.
Thanks. I mean, excellent point. So Beth, maybe you could talk about how you got involved in the young professionals and kind of what's that's meant, and kind of, I guess, maybe outline for those who may not be aware of what the young professionals do kind of writ large, and then kind of what you've drawn from it.
Sure, yeah. So I'm the secretary of the Shires Young Professionals, and the group's mission is really to connect people in their 20s through 40s in the area, because, as you said, you know, people might move here if they don't meet anybody and they don't get embraced by the community, like the four of us very fortunately have been. They move away, and we lose that talent. Right. And we lose those friends. So yeah, the mission is really to just create connections, and you know, the sort of reason for that, the like on paper fiscal reason, right, is to retain talent. Yeah. But it's this community based. We want people to be happy here and be connected. So that's the purpose of it. And we do all sorts of different events. Like, it's really event based. We have a very active WhatsApp group where people are asking, I need an electrician on my very old house. Like, so that it's really helpful that way, and people are always sharing events and being like, hey, anyone want to go to this? But we also have really, really great like quality programming. So we went to the Rutland climbing gym recently because we're into climbing. And that was a great, like a lot of people came from here, it's an hour and a half away. A lot of people actually went from Bennington, and we did it in combination with the Rutland Young Professionals. So like making connections regionally, which was a great connection to make. They're wonderful. We are doing Habitat for Humanity on Saturday. So a volunteer event. We do a lot of volunteer work. There was a period packing party, I think, last month to provide supplies for people who need menstrual care. We may be having a gala sometime later this year.
Great.
Stay tuned. Which would
There's
be
really
exciting.
something for everybody.
Yeah.
There really is. We had a gamers night, like we did board games, there was karaoke, there's also just mixers, meeting up in bars, but that's not for everyone because it's very intimidating to walk into a bar and just be like, hey, I'm new here. So, but the gamers night brought out different people from the karaoke night of people who were excited to get up in front of people they didn't know and sing or whatever, and that's different people from the St. Patrick's Day pub crawl. Like we really try to plan things across the spectrum. Family friendly things. We had like an apple picking thing in the fall, with all the kids running around. It was really sweet. So it's really across the board. And really that aim is to make these connections professional and personal. And I have to say that the way that I found out about the Young Professionals, again, we moved here during COVID.
Right.
It's hard to connect with people. Window Dressers is this awesome program.
Yes.
It's
Heard
so
of them.
great. For anybody who hasn't heard of it, it's it's these low cost window inserts that in the winter really help lower heating costs.
Oh, those.
And they're very simple looking. It's just like it's like cling wrap over
No, I know what
over a wooden frame. And so they do these amazing community builds where both the people getting the window inserts work on these window inserts, and community members work on them too to keep the cost really low. And so I'd seen that was happening. I'm really into mitigating climate change, so I signed up the entire family. We met Jeannie Jenkins, who introduced me to Beth Wallace, who is with the Young Professionals, and that's how I kind of got involved in it. So I, just for people moving here, just do something. Just get involved. Go volunteer somewhere, and I promise you will meet the person that will introduce you to another person. Like you'll find your community that way.
And the Young Professionals are so good. It's just such a welcoming community. If you walk into a room and you say, hey, I'm new here, I don't know anybody, you'll get swarmed by people who are looking to kind of make those connections and sort of bring you into the fold. It's a really, really amazing group of people.
It really is.
Yeah, it's great. And what's the ballpark about how many people are in Shires, Young Professionals? I'm sure it changes, but ballpark, what's kind of that core group look like?
We have, I believe, about 150 members, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
And expanding, all the time. Any given event, you're going to have 20 to 30 people.
Yeah, the core group is probably 30, 40, something like that, that sort of pretty regularly show up to stuff.
And it depends, Habitat, they can only have so many workers, it's limited to 12, and,
Which we fill every time.
Yeah.
There are people asking me if there were still slots open. It's a really giving group of people, too,
Yeah,
That's great.
the volunteer events always sell out.
Yeah, that's
People are
great.
into it, so.
Well, I think people may be surprised to hear the number 150 young professionals. I mean, I think there's this perception that, and I think understandably, right, we're the second oldest county, and I think we just moved up to the third oldest state from the second oldest state. So we're old and we're aging, and I think 150 people in young professionals, I think, is kind of a breath of fresh air that people would be interested in hearing.
Well, and I feel silly represent. I mean, I don't feel silly, but I'm 40. I'm Vermont young, right? Which is great. I love being Vermont young, but we really do have younger members that are on the board and active in organizing things. So I promise it's not just 40-year-olds like me. It's like the whole gamut.
It's great. That's great.
Sorry, not to interrupt. I was just going to say it'll be interesting to see, is one of the things that impressed me, especially becoming involved with Town Hall in Sandgate, is there how many people who have been here for decades, whose families have been here forever, and either volunteer their time to help the town out through government or in other ways, or are paid but are not paid money they can live on, but yet they serve year after year after year and decade after decade. So it'll be interesting to see how this influx of new people meshes with those. I mean, it seems like it's a good thing for the future of the state.
I agree, and one of the events that two events that I was really proud of that the Shires Young Professionals did was one where we introduced people to Town Meeting Day, and Susan Clark, who wrote the book on Town Meeting Day, all in favor. She's amazing. She gave us a presentation, and the goal was really like, hey, this is Vermont. You have to get involved. Kind of, there's a calling to live here to get involved. And then we also had a Meet the Candidates event before the election of all of the representatives, all of the candidates for representative in sort of the key Bennington races. And they all came, like most of them came. We were missing a couple only. And that was the way to like, hey, get to know your representatives. Also, let's build the bench, right? Anyone can run.
That was one of the things that really hit me when we moved up here is I had actually heard, and I'm in the business of debunking stereotypes. Like that's one of the things we do in language class, right? And there's always a little grain of truth in some stereotypes, but there's also much exaggeration. And I had heard down in Pennsylvania, some of this sort of stereotypes of many rural areas of, it's hard to break in and it's hard to make friends and you're always going to be an outsider, a flatlander, and I think that it's key, getting involved, making those connections, getting out there and realizing that if you just stay at home, that's actually going to reinforce the negative stereotype, because Vermonters are incredibly involved. They're always politically active on all sorts of fronts. And they're very well informed because of things like Town Meeting Day. You might, whatever your personal stereotypes about whoever you see on the street may be, all of those people are remarkably well informed about what's going on. And I found that lovely because I like politics, but I found that it was also a way to, it's a way to start those conversations and get to know people and get involved. And then you find that, it's really a fabulous, it's not a rejecting community. It's an accepting community.
Very true. Yeah, if you show that you care about the community you're in, you'll be accepted by everybody. And I've really felt nothing but sort of good vibes coming from the old timers when they see that I'm working on something that's related to the town.
Yeah, that's great. So we have, I think, less than 10 minutes, which is, time flies, right? And the discussion's just been wonderful. But I'm wondering, just in the few minutes we have left, any kind of parting words of wisdom, suggest advice to anybody who might be contemplating relocating to the region or exploring a career in the region, or, I think we've heard a lot of great advice. I mean, get involved, right? Try to find your people, but what other nuggets do we have for?
I would love to say that if anybody wants to come teach in Vermont, it's a really fabulous place to teach, and we need teachers. We really need teachers. Now being at Arlington, I love being in a small school, and I hope that we preserve our small schools. Arlington is a really great close-knit, one of those close-knit communities that we've been talking about, and it's really a wonderful place to teach. It's got a supportive administration, and it's got kind of a laid-back attitude. It's not prescriptive. Vermont does not get prescriptive. We don't like being too prescriptive about anything in any profession, because we don't like people boxing us in. Freedom and and
Unity,
flexibility,
right?
right? Freedom and unity, but flexibility,
Yeah.
you know, and trust as a professional,
Yeah.
you know, that you can make decisions in your classroom, and I hope those things get preserved, as I said. But right now it is. I've taught in several different places, and it is a wonderful, wonderful place for an education career.
Great. Thanks. Who else?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I guess one thing I notice here that kind of defies logic is just it seems like there's this weird kind of breakdown in the way that economics are supposed to work around here in terms of, like, you know, there are all these elderly people who need medical care and nursing homes and single-story houses, and, you know, they're like you said, finding contractors is incredibly hard. You know, if you want to move here, find a doctor now. Like, start looking now. You know, doctors, dentists, specialists. Yeah, like there are a lot of people here who now have the money to pay for those services, but there's been a lag in those things kind of arriving. And
They're aging out too.
well, yeah, and
The
a lot of the
doctors and the dentists.
it's true. A lot of the doctors, dentists, a lot of the plumbers and electricians are all, yeah. Oh, sorry, I'm retired. I just stopped doing it last year. So yeah, you know, if you're interested in working in the trades, if you're a handyman, I could personally keep you busy for years.
We have a backlog.
Yeah.
I'll give you my husband's card.
Right. So yeah, it is. It's this really, and you know, you got to learn how to do it. Really, if you want to own a house around here, you have to learn how to do that stuff yourself, because sometimes you'll call around and there's nobody there to help you.
Especially with the old funky houses that are not
Right.
standard anything.
And again, like, that's where the community comes in, right? Like, when my furnace went out, I called my neighbor who used to be a contractor, and he came over, you know, middle of the night and helped me out because he's a good, you know. So yeah, it's those things are tricky and lagging, and I think we're working on them. I think things are moving in the right direction, but yeah, just we need a lot more people who are in those sort of a variety of different skilled trades.
Great.
Yeah, there's a waiting list at the trade schools of Vermont, including our wonderful Southwest Tech.
Yeah.
Have waiting lists for some programs because
Yeah.
the kids are figuring that out, that it's a really good field to go into, and you know, I have a lot of very interested students,
Yeah.
and it's something to be supported.
I can't wait to hire them. I'm so glad there's a pipeline.
Yeah, right.
Thank goodness.
I will tell them.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, I really feel like I don't want to use the word, but that kind of feeling that the only path, you know, forward was a 4-year or college degree. I think that really is changing, and I'm glad you mentioned Southwest Tech, you know, Community College of Vermont. I mean, there's some great kind of programs, you know, for people who maybe aren't interested in going to a 4-year school, and you know, as we've all recognized, boy, those we need the trades. Anything else? What we miss? Anything?
Just to reiterate, join something,
Yeah,
anything,
get involved.
anything.
I
And
agree.
it might not be the first thing you join, might not be the thing, but you'll meet people and learn about everything else.
Oh yeah, and we made friends here so much faster than we did
Oh,
living in
me
St.
too.
Louis. It just
Absolutely
we made just a
amazing.
minimal amount of effort, and then
Yeah.
it just everybody's moving at the same time. Everybody's hungry to meet new people. So it's just been really, living here is awesome. It's been so great, better than I could have ever imagined.
And I would say something
Totally
that
agree.
you said really resonated with me, and that was the meeting times for things.
Mhm.
And it is tricky because we have a short day in the winter.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
have all kinds of
Yeah.
fun weather, and you know, and so people don't, you know, finding that magic moment when
Yeah.
people can meet to be involved in a lot of these different organizations and get connected and make professional connections, personal connections. It is very challenging.
Yeah.
I'd also say to that, like, I know, you know, your organization is often running a lot of these community organizations that also pull in volunteers. And so the staff have to, you know, they have business hours. And so getting the staff at a comfortable time and the volunteers at a comfortable time is really tough.
Sure, and community participation too, right? Like, I ran some public outreach sessions for the Pownell Town Forest, and we tried to do them at times when people would be available. But yeah, people are trying to get their kids fed. On the weekends, they've
Yep.
got sports. So yeah, even just getting people who aren't ready to volunteer but who just want to turn out and give input, even that can be really difficult.
Yeah.
Childcare at meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it's,
yeah,
you know, I'm
for sure.
glad you raised that. You know, as part of our our outreach that we did for the town of Bennington as they're doing their municipal plan and we're doing our regional plan, we really have learned some lessons about going and actually going to the people where they are and providing, doing focus groups at specific places where you want that input into whatever planning work you're doing and providing food and childcare and really being flexible about that in public engagement is a
I
really
would
important
just say
lesson.
to both of you, most high school students have a community service requirement.
Yes.
High school students make great babysitters.
Yeah.
They could get their community service hours. You could have some free babysitting. More people would come to your meeting.
Great.
Good point.
Great idea.
It's true. We've Tara tried that at one of the things that we did, and there were a handful of kids there that were just kind of hanging out eating pizza while everyone had the meeting. It worked out great.
That's great.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, I can't thank the panel enough for doing taking the time to do the op-ed pieces for the banner, but also sharing your stories with us this afternoon. I hope people who watch will be inspired and take away some things about what the opportunities are here, ways to become involved in your community, and in fact, this is a pretty great place to both live and work. And I want to thank not only the panel, I want to thank Cat TV for its partnership, not only in this program, but throughout Career Month. They've been out in taping at a number of events that we've done throughout the month, and they're going to do kind of a summary show at the end of the month. So I really want to thank Cat TV, and I really want to thank the Bennington Banner, which has been an integral partner to our Career Month activities since its inception. And I need to do one final shout out to my off-camera colleague, Dara Zink, who really has pulled all of this together and really does all of the work on the Workforce and Ed Committee from BCRC's perspective. So thank you, Dara, for not only your work on this, but everything you do for BCRC. So thanks very much. And again, thank you for viewing the show. We appreciate everyone's time.